Hello, welcome to Midweek Gaming. What an interesting week it's been. I always say that, but this is a very interesting week, very depressing week for multiple reasons. But let's just go with one of the big headliners. PlayStation has announced that discs are dead as far as they're concerned. They are ditching physical disc sales or physical disc releases starting January 2028. So not yet, but they will. Which is not good. Not good for a lot of reasons. Collectors, enthusiasts, people who care about game preservation and ownership, bunch of people. And this mostly comes on the back of something they themselves kind of revealed, the actual reasoning behind it, which is kind of dumb. They said it was to better serve the fans and to meet with industry trends. Specifically, they said that this is, quote, a natural, or, excuse me, yeah, no, this is, quote, a natural direction for Sony Interactive Entertainment to adopt to consumer trends as the general preference for digital media significantly outpaces physical discs, Sherman wrote. Sherman himself is the senior director of Sony Interactive Entertainment's content communications, for those who are curious. Which, in his defense, he is right. If you actually look at graphs depicting, digital game sales versus physical, they are massively outweighing, I think, things like the console generations having a lot more of a digital option, as well as Steam just being Steam and GOG has really contributed to that. But again, it's kind of the second part which really irks people if you read which you read between the lines. Well, which is, quote, well, no, the third part, and then I'll do the second part, then the third part. The second part is this transition will enable us to align more closely to what most of our community prefers to access and play games today. Which is funny because most of those reasons are reasons they themselves created. Part of the reason digital game sales are going up is because, well, digital gaming is just becoming more and more almost mandatory. I mean, like I said, the PlayStation, or not the PlayStation, the PC side of gaming has been digital only for pretty much ever since discs got ditched in like what, mid 2000s, early 2010s? What do you think, Justin? Mid 2010s, you want to say? Early 2010s?
I'd say mid 2010s.
Mid 2010s, let's say. So,
Yeah.
And then, of course, with consoles becoming more digital. Don't get me wrong, like I said, it's not a thing if you like digital, honestly. It's just the fact that the very fact that there was a physical option is more honestly important than if there's a physical option. The fact that the physical exists is far more important than the actual numbers of it. He continues by saying, we'll continue to prioritize our resources to drive innovation in how players can access games and provide choice. Oh, that's a funny word. As to where players prefer to purchase new games, whether there's at retailers or PlayStation Store. We remain committed to delivering a world-class gaming experience to our fans, and we thank you for your continued support. To paraphrase a certain pundit I was listening talk about this, what about retailers? Retailers are not even part of this equation. If you're entirely going discless, then that means retailers don't even factor into this equation. It's PlayStation Store or nothing. Like, what are you gonna sell retailers? Empty box copies? I don't. I mean, you could, but at that point, why bother stocking them? Like, what retailers would bother stocking them? I mean, heck, this whole thing kind of goes back to what GTA 6 is doing right now, right? There's a whole controversy right now where GTA 6's quote physical edition is just a box with a code in it, which really screams Fallout 76, but I ain't gonna get there. And a lot of stores for that reason are just refusing to stock it because if it's just a code which points you to the store, why bother going to the retailer? Like, just go through their store, which, on the topic of their store, fun fact, there's actually been studies that if you go to the PlayStation store and these digital storefronts for PlayStation, you actually pay more than if you go to the retailers and buy the discs. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, it's a money decision. It's just a money decision, really. Which is honestly really shitty because, like I said, this basically means that game preservation is effectively dead because how the heck are you going to preserve a game that's entirely held on the cloud in their systems? I mean, sure, it's held on your hardware locally to some degree, but you can't access that. Those systems are bolted down so you physically can't access that code. It's very different than if you were to download it on PC, for example. So, yeah, game preservation, as far as PlayStation is concerned, post 2028 is going to go just downhill completely, unless they reverse course, which I doubt. Between this and the brainless death of Destiny franchise, it really makes you wonder how much rocks they've got in the head of those decision makers. Like, Do they honestly see this going well for them? Like, again, the whole concept here is that they're possibly building a little walled garden, which is kind of what Nintendo also has, or Nintendo does have and has had for a long time. But as I was even telling Justin before the show, that's not a one-to-one transition. Nintendo has selling points to them that are beyond the whole we're a walled garden thing. They make up for that, if anything. That's actually not a good thing. That's actually something you could ding them for. They make it up by the fact that they're considered the family friendly console. You know, the console you buy for your kid and slap in front of them when you're on an airplane or something, you know. They've got that whole family friendly branding going for them. They got party games. They got all that stuff going for them. And heck, even before the Steam Deck days, they were really the only real entry into mobile gaming, really. I mean, sure, mobile gaming, when I say it now, refers to mobile gaming, like phone gaming, but on the go gaming used to be mostly just relegated to Nintendo products, DSs, freaking 3DSs, really. That kind of stuff. I mean, sure, some companies like, interestingly enough, PlayStation have attempted to get into that in the past with the PSP and the PS Vita, but both of them have failed miserably. So, that's kind of the thing, right? And technically, even if you want to bring the Steam Deck in as modern day, going, well, what about the Steam Deck now? Steam Deck is more, as I kind of joked with Justin again before the stream, they're kind of just the geriatrics game console, really. They're basically just PCs that you can play games on through things like Steam and through emulation. Well, not emulation, but like other methods, things like GOG games and stuff like that on. And they're more a gateway into Linux, if anything else. It's a whole other discussion. If anything, things like ROG Ally and just ROG games and those kind of handheld consoles are competing with them rather than actually Nintendo products. That's a whole other ballpark. So Nintendo is very much its own ecosystem, which again has its own problems, but that's not here nor there. The point is that you can't just make a walled garden and expect to emulate Nintendo. If anything, PlayStation should know this better than anyone because they've been trying to do that for bloody heck knows how long, and they failed every single time. So you'd think they would learn that at this point, but I guess some people just don't learn, yeah? What do you think, Justin?
I think people don't learn.
You can tell I mostly do the talking on these streams.
Yeah. I'm also still slightly partly tired because we did this when I decided to wake up not too long ago, so I'm slightly out of it as I'm fighting the automatons and dying to the and maybe crashing. Oh, never
and
mind.
died to the automatons.
I died and then it looked like the game crashed and then it didn't crash. I think it was just heavy processing a lot of things. But yes.
Yeah.
I'm here.
And again, he's here. I feel like I cut you off there.
No, you're good. You're good.
But, anyways, that's kind of the other side to it as well, where you have to consider that the fact that, again, physical discs exist is far more important than, how important they are in terms of the grand scheme of things. The fact that they exist, again, has things with physical preservation. If you own a disc, you can resell it, you can trade it, you can keep it in your library. Sure, yeah, you might not get the day one patches, and yeah, technically there's an argument you can be made that with some games these days being online, even if you do have a disc, sure, once the servers go down, the game is dead. Technically, Anthem is kind of an example of that in a way. But the fact is, there are also many games that don't fit into that category. Horizon Zero, for example, which is interestingly enough on PlayStation and or not PlayStation, obviously, is on Steam. We'll get to that. Is technically a game that you can play entirely offline. It doesn't need to be completely up to date to be playable. Sure, you might not get some bug fixes and stuff with that, but as far as I know, if it's not up to date, it's not going to prevent you from playing the game. The game still works perfectly fine without internet. Which goes into another side where, if memory serves, a while back, I'm going to have to dig out this article and put it down below because I did not do it for the show, but I believe PlayStation has also revealed that they're pulling back from the PC market. They're going to have more of their games focused purely on PlayStation. When, again, this taken into context with their disc removal and the whole walled garden mentality makes more sense, right? They're trying to build the walled garden. They're trying to give you reasons to come to PlayStation because, much like Nintendo,
They
you
want
ain't
you
getting
to
Mario.
stay, and they want your monies.
Yeah, you ain't getting Mario on Steam. So it's gonna start becoming you ain't gonna get pick a PlayStation character on Steam. They honestly don't have too many recognizable brand character names these days. Get Kratos. We'll go with Kratos, which technically you can't get Kratos on Steam because again, that was back when they were still doing Steam games. So both God of War and God of War Ragnarok are on Steam. So yeah, even that doesn't really work. So anyways, like I said, this strategy is just filled with holes and there's also a greater argument you could say here that with this being the way it is, I mean, perhaps it's actually very likely at this point the next generation is probably going to be entirely diskless, which with the memory shortage makes you wonder, is that going to mean that there's going to be less memory in the console? Like, combine the memory shortage issues which we're having right now with the fact that the next generation is PlayStations are probably going to, no, definitely going to be diskless at this rate. I mean, there's already rumors circulating that the next console generation is going to be 2027 release. So maybe not, honestly, if they get it in right before that, diskless window opens. But it's very likely that the next generation of consoles is going to be, at least as far as PlayStation is concerned, entirely diskless, which if they're diskless and between the memory shortage, does that mean we're going to just get smaller consoles? Which between the diskless being what it is means you're going to have to, and I even would tell people this when I was selling consoles as a salesman, you're going to have a lot of that memory split between both the disk. You're going to have that memory split between the disk and the local hard drive, so you're going to offset the download slightly. Maybe not much, especially with modern games, but slightly. Versus with a diskless console, all of that is going to be on your local drive, which, considering some games these days, a lot of them, especially AAA games, are massive. That's going to quickly eat up memory, especially, like I said, if we're having smaller memory consoles going in the future. So this just seems like a recipe for absolute disaster. And then again, maybe PlayStation will come out and say, hey, we'll sell you the drives as well, which nickel and dime their players, which
Yes.
great, right? Just great.
Why wouldn't they?
Honestly, Xbox ironically could come out of the woodwork and get a one up on on PlayStation here by kind of doing the same thing PlayStation did to them in the Xbox 360 days with the PS4, and just being like, "This is how you share games on the Xbox, whatever the hell we're calling it at this point,"
See,
and
this is
just
the
giving a game over.
thing. Nintendo could have done that, but Nintendo's technically already done that in a different way with their sharing cards.
That's the thing. Like I said, Nintendo's not a weird. Nintendo's weird to use the comparison because they've always kind of done their thing in the corner.
They did their thing.
They do their thing in the corner. I mean, like I said, that's such a walled garden ecosystem. That's such a closed-in ecosystem, almost like Apple in that regard, right? Where it's not
Mhm.
almost proper to compare Apple to anything else in the mobile space because they're just so unique, let's call it, in how they do things. But yeah, they kind of have that going for them as well with their digital thing transfers. But yeah, no, Xbox could definitely clown on them like they did back in the day to like PlayStation did them back in the day. That would be hilarious. But who knows? Maybe Xbox will also go discless. I don't think so though, because I don't see how this would honestly work too well. I mean, sure, like I said, discless does seem to be what everyone wants to go towards because, if it's all discless, then that means they can charge whatever price they want on their platforms and they don't have to compete with anybody. Like I said before in the show, if you go to PlayStation stores, there's proof that you do pay more on the PlayStation store than anywhere else. So, maybe they'll do that, but I doubt it because, like I said, that just doesn't seem like it's going to go over well. And and again, there's another side to this as well. You got to go into, which is the resale market is going to be completely dead for PlayStation because if PlayStation games are just no longer tradable or sellable, I mean, you can't trade a code once you use it. Once you use it to open the license up on your account, that's it. The code's dead. So the resale market is going to be completely gone as far as PlayStation goes. So preservation is going to take a downswing, resale is going to take a downswing, and the retailers are going to be absolutely not stocking these whatever the heck they do because, like we see with GTA 6, if it's just a code in a box, why the hell bother stocking it? Just go to the store. It makes no sense. So yeah, it's a dark day for gaming as far as PlayStation is concerned. Between this and the whole franchise with Destiny, really does seem like the executives have a head full of rocks. So, yeesh. Anyways, I kind of closed out this one. Like I said, or not. I did not say. I was planning to actually do Destiny this week and finally cover that shabacle. Don't think I've forgotten about that business. The whole layoffs and all that. The whole other business related to Sony. But this
That's for
came up
another
and
time.
yeah, this came up and I figured this was far more pressing. And then Justin, just before the show, gives me a whole business of the Stop Killing Games movement, which is also pretty pressing. It's also pretty hilarious, if I'm being honest with you. Look into that. Look into the California Stop Killing Games bill. For spoiler, if you're hoping that passes, you are not going to be happy with what you see. But on the bright side, at least we haven't completely lost. But it is kind of funny what they used to defend the ESA, or what the ESA used to defend themselves. Spoiler, they just lie on camera. But anyways, that's the show. Hope y'all enjoyed. Hope y'all have a good one, and see y'all next week. Oh, and happy Canada Day for Canada. We didn't do the show yesterday because Canada Day. Thought I'd take it as a holiday off. Bye-bye, everybody.
Have a good one.